Gary Oppedahl, thanks for sitting down with us today.
Of course, good to be with you.
Now, you're now heading up economic development for the city of Albuquerque, but before that, you were an entrepreneur yourself, including with companies like MCOR. And let's start big picture. What do you think needs to change right now in the city of Albuquerque to support those entrepreneurs who are getting started right now?
You know, we have an entrepreneurial spirit here in Albuquerque. I think it comes from our big skies and the way we go out and interact with each other. But you can be good at math, you still need to go to algebra class. So I think what's needed here is to teach people how to start up a business and how to make a small business successful. Those are things that are not in the Kool-Aid, they're not in the normal dinner time conversations here that we could really use some help with. I think the other thing we could help with is changing the language around entrepreneurism. A lot of people think entrepreneurs are people who run around in their own private jet plane and take unreasonable risks with other people's money and start a business every other day. Well, that's no one's experience, right? Our entrepreneurs are those job creators who usually pay themselves last. They're the first ones to take a cut and pay if necessary. They're passionate about what they're doing. They're trying to make a dent in the universe with their little company. And those folks are absolutely part of the fabric of who we are and who the new economy is going to be. But you don't have to start a company to be an entrepreneur. Entrepreneur simply from the French means to take action. So you can be an entrepreneur within government. You can be an entrepreneur within academia. Kathy Winograd is a great example of that, the president of CNM. And I think what we need to do is get over the word entrepreneurium and the mythology, entrepreneur and the mythology of same, and start thinking about how we can all take action to make our own lives, those around us, better.
How are you working to connect different organizations? You just mentioned CNM. You know, this support of entrepreneurs is not just coming from the city, it's coming from lots of places. How are you playing a role in bringing all those resources together?
One of the things I think is most significant about what we're doing right now is that it's not about the city. It is about the community, and it's about the community raising up and believing in itself for its own job creation and economic mobility through entrepreneurship and innovation. And you know, if it was just up to the city, you know, there's lots of issues with that. And one of them is, like I said, the community itself needs to be involved. And so what we're trying to do is be the catalyst for that community to be involved, but then have them raise up and do all of the things that support entrepreneurs. We have all the assets we need here in New Mexico. It's about awareness, coordination, distribution, and flow. And so if we can do through a series of meetups, through easy entry into entrepreneurial resources and helping people connect, collaborate, and communicate, then we know great things will happen. When you get good people together, good things happen. We need to get people together more.
Now, is this about growing economically and bringing more jobs into Albuquerque?
It's about bringing more jobs to Albuquerque and also about economic mobility. And those are two different things. And there's three ways you can create jobs, right? One is, you know, the typical economic development way to do things is to get companies to move here. That's called chasing smokestacks. And we certainly will do that and continue to do that. This is an and, not an or. What we also have to do is look at our existing businesses and see how we can help them grow and thrive and through all of the things that we're doing here, and also to start up new companies. And in the new world order, we have to also think about all those people who are doing more project-based and contract-based employment arrangements these days. And so we have to get ahead of that and watch. You know, Wayne Gretzky used to say, don't skate to where the puck is, skate to where it's going to be. So we have to really look at what are the trends in the economy going forward and how do we make sure that we're getting ahead of those and being proactive instead of reacting.
Is there some companies that you would like to see more than others, more tech startups in Albuquerque?
We need all jobs. I know there's people who say, well, you know, don't bring any more call centers. I don't know why not. I mean, one of my kids worked at a call center for many years. I think it's a great way to learn how to come to a job, you know, show up on time, work on a team, even get some supervisory and training experience. You know, and these jobs, you know, they're not $50 an hour jobs, but they're, you know, $12 to $18 an hour jobs. They come with full benefits. And we're unique for call centers here in that we don't have tornadoes, hurricanes, tsunamis, earthquakes, and we're perfectly positioned for those. So why not rely on our strengths and do that? So not only for call centers, but for back office, and the more back office you get with finance and legal and HR and those kinds of things, the more we're in line to maybe do some headquarters or other kinds of things that are really good for our community. So we don't say no to any jobs. Now, do we emphasize some? Do we have strengths in some areas like photonics, like aerospace, like biosciences? Absolutely. And we have those great national labs as resources for folks that have advanced degrees in these things. But we don't say no to jobs. What we do is we say yes to economic mobility and job creation.
Now, for those folks who might be wanting to start a business who are already in Albuquerque, from Albuquerque, thinking about it, I hear a lot of people say the money's not here. And so what do you tell them? So
we have some holes in our capital stack, there's no question, and we're very aware of those. We're working on ways of figuring out, A, how to get those small solopreneurs. There's 4 types of entrepreneurs: solopreneurs, main streeters, second stagers, and high growth. And we want to make sure that we've got support and encouragement for all 4 types. So for the solopreneur and the main streeter, what we really want to do is start getting more microloans available, not so much based on your credit score, but based on the strength of your business plan. So we're working with Living Cities and some other philanthropies to get that into place. We've got a pretty good angel network now, and we can get money between the $25,000 to $350,000 range. That's pretty healthy. Where we've got another gap then is in that next, what we call early stage, between $350,000, $400,000 and a couple million. That's where the VCs have kind of gone downstream nationally. That's a trend, but for sure in the geographic location of Albuquerque, they've gone more towards the higher end. So you see companies locally, Scorpios, Trilumina, Lavu, getting in the $8.5 to $15 million range of investment, but they already have products. When a company has just got a minimum viable product, they've got some customer interest, but they're not right there for sales yet, that's where we've got an issue. So we're working with many places in the state to try to fill that void, and I think you'll see some good announcements on that by the end of the year.
How do you think that Albuquerque will change? Some people say examples are San Francisco or Seattle or Austin. How do you think Albuquerque would change in this idea of encouraging entrepreneurship and encouraging more businesses to start here?
First of all, again, back to entrepreneurship, that word means to take action, right? So we want people to take action no matter where they are and what they're doing. And, and I think that's about our choices. And so I see a city that is vibrant with people making choices and pursuing things that they're passionate about. One of our sayings is, if you're not passionate about what you're doing, please stop, you're annoying the rest of us. And what I want people to do is really enjoy their work, what they do. And I think that that's the key. What I'd love to see is a community where people enjoy their work. They have opportunities for work, they have different opportunities, and they truly enjoy it and are passionate about it. So it would look like that. We would not look like a San Francisco or anywhere else. I always tell people, we're weirder than Austin with better weather and less traffic, right? But the key is we don't want to become like anybody else. We want to remain quirky, the Albuquerque culture, the amazing cultural and diversity that we have here. But add in those entrepreneurial opportunities by taking action in many different ways that help people really enjoy their work.
Can you tell me a little bit about Entrepreneur Office Hours?
Sure.
It's an interesting program.
Sure. What we were trying to do with Entrepreneur Office Hours is just to provide advice for folks who just don't feel like they've got the money, the ability, or the trust, for whatever reason, to go to a lawyer or a banker or an accountant or somebody who's in marketing or entrepreneurs that have been there, done that. And make sure that the ladder extends to folks who are thinking about doing things and offer free of charge. Come in and talk to folks like that. These people are just amazing people, by the way. They're give before you get. They're wonderful people in our community who are giving of their time and volunteering to come down and offer, legal advice and accounting advice, et cetera, to these young entrepreneurs to say, I'm saying young, old entrepreneurs too, but people who are thinking about doing something and just aren't sure how to get started or where to go next. And I think that's the key to Entrepreneur Office Hours. That's the objective.
And where is it?
It's at the Verge Building, 317 Commercial Avenue Northeast, every Wednesday from 3 to 5. As a matter of fact, Wednesday is Entrepreneurial Wednesday, every Wednesday in Albuquerque. And it starts off in the morning with 1 Million Cups over at 200 Broadway at Fat Pipe, where we highlight 2 companies, existing companies every week, and in front of an audience that says, wow, that's great, how can we help? And then goes through the day through ABQID lecture series and other things, and then kind of ends at Entrepreneur Office Hours 3 to 5.
How are you going to measure success, or how is the city going to measure or look at success in this investment of resources and attention on entrepreneurs right now?
We're going to be measuring success by the number of jobs created, obviously, but also in economic mobility, as I said. It's both job creation and economic mobility. So we want to see people not only get more with their dollars. For instance, the reason why we want to get a bus rapid transit system, which we call ART, through, is because if you can get rid of a car, that's $8,000 to $12,000 a year raise. Right, and so that's a big deal for folks who are working along that corridor, but also in company formation. And we really want to focus on company formation from underrepresented folks because we know that the underrepresented folks hire other underrepresented folks, and I think that that's a key to how we move things forward, especially in Albuquerque, is to get everyone involved. One of the keys is to include everyone. So as we move this economic engine forward, getting everyone involved is one of the keys.
And how are you measuring underrepresented groups? So
it's interesting. We have the luxury of being a minority-majority city and state already. So you can't say minority-owned businesses. What you say is underrepresented businesses, because what we do want to do is get more people involved who are and into business ownership and into the wealth creation part of things that don't normally self-identify as entrepreneurs. So how do we do that? How do we get out in the community and help those folks identify as someone that could start a business or could start a business with friends, right? It takes a hipster, a hacker, and a huckster to start any business. And so how do you get a group of people together to start a business? How do you form partnerships? How do you do those things that can add to our economy and get us in a virtuous spiral versus the vicious cycle?
Gary, we appreciate you sitting down with us this week. We're going to continue to cover entrepreneurship here on New Mexico in Focus the rest of the fall.
Great. Good to be with you.